All right, hopefully it'll start here. There we go. So I'm going to share PowerPoint through some of it, but I'm also going to come back to the gallery every so often. So yeah, we'll start out pretty simply. If you all just want to please introduce yourself in the chat. If you just want to put your name, where you're from or where you're calling in from, and maybe a fun fact about yourself. Just an opportunity for us to get to know each other a little bit. And I may have to occasionally come back because I still hear people trying to get into the meeting here. So I want to make sure I let them in. But hopefully at some point everyone will join. So yeah, if you just want to introduce yourselves in the chat, where you're calling in from, and then maybe a fun fact about yourself. We can kind of do this as the meeting's going on. I'll give everyone just a minute to do it now, but then, if you don't get it done before we move on, that's okay. But just want everyone to be able to introduce themselves in the chat. Awesome. Well, definitely keep an eye on the chat. Get to know some of your fellow AmeriCorps members here. Yeah, I just want to start out by saying congratulations to everyone. You have officially confirmed your spot with City Year Seattle. We're excited to have you. Only about 25% of our applicants, confirmed to serve with us, and so you're one of the few folks that has the pleasure of serving with us. We're excited to have you. So congratulations and welcome. Sorry, I'll let someone else in. Oh, they went away. So we're just going to start with a quick warm up. And this is something that we kind of do as a piece of our City Year Seattle culture. We call them JD Raps. Some people call them jars. There's a number of different ways people talk about these different things in City Year, but depending on which site you serve at or which sort of national meeting you're on. But the essence of it is that we start every meeting with joys, diamonds, windows, ripples, or appreciations. And so I'll tell you a little bit about what each of these things is. And if you want to share in the chat, you can. But this is the way we start all of our meetings at City Year. It's just a little piece of our culture to kind of help center us and build a little community at the beginning. So sharing a joy is pretty obvious, just something that's bringing you joy today or the day that you're in the meeting. Diamonds comes from one of our founding stories. Okay, sorry, y'all. I can hear people trying to get in. Diamonds comes from one of our founding stories called Sand into Diamonds. And basically what that is like when you take something in a situation that maybe isn't the greatest and sort of, turn it into a positive. So it's all kind of like finding that silver lining in something, turning sand into diamonds. And then a window is kind of a window into what's going on in your life. And so a lot of times windows are a way for us to kind of just be honest with everyone about where we're at, what we're bringing into the space. We don't have great days all the time. And so a window is an opportunity for someone to just share where they're at in that moment, and just kind of be transparent about that, because we don't expect everyone to come into this work at 100% every day. A ripple is something that where you do something or someone else does something and it kind of ripples out to other people. So the example I always use when talking to folks that just confirmed with us is like, for example, you've obviously gone through the interview, confirmed a spot with us, and a ripple would be if like you were talking to your friends about it and one of them applied and also ended up serving with us. So your sort of application and serving with us kind of ripples out to someone else, and then an appreciation is just appreciating somebody else, usually somebody that's also in the meeting, but can also just be an appreciation for someone else in the outside space. So I'm just gonna again give everyone a few minutes to think about a JD wrap, post one in the chat. And again, this is something that you'll start every meeting at with City Year. So we always want to kind of keep folks thinking about the joys and the appreciations that you have and show gratitude. So we'll just take a minute, let you all put some of those in the chat. If anyone wants to share out loud, please do take yourself off mute. I'm not going to force anyone to talk if they don't want to, but if you do, definitely take yourself off mute. Love to hear what you have to say. Awesome. And again, I'll go back to the chat and look at all those. I always like to see what's bringing people joy and stuff. We'll kind of jump in here. So I want to start out with, before we get into the actual content of the meeting tonight, I wanted to start with just kind of an update on, service and COVID-19 and where we're at and what you all can expect. I know this is top of mind for a lot of people, especially as you're preparing for the upcoming service year with us. And so I just want to start with that before we actually get into the heart of what our meeting today is going to be about. And so ultimately, we have a number of different, sites across the country with City Year, and we are our approaches to service at this time have been different depending on what site we're at and what the school district's approaches have been at those sites. So currently in Seattle, we're transitioning back into being in schools. And so our core members are transitioning to being back in school and stuff like that. And, they're eligible and able to get the vaccine if they want it. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of COVID. They were virtual for much of the year, but we didn't have to lay anyone off or anything. And if for some reason things had to go back virtual, everyone would still have their position. The service looks a little bit different because it's online, but we still have programming. It just looks a little bit different. In terms of this upcoming school year, we are planning to go back to schools in person. So if you have confirmed with us, which you have, like you can expect to be in person, be in service in person with City Year Seattle this upcoming year. So I just want to start with that and kind of gauge if anyone had any questions around that before we get into the bulk of what the meeting's going to be about tonight. If not, that's okay. But if you have any questions about sort of service and COVID-19, now would be the time to ask them. If not, that's totally okay. I do know it's top of mind for people, so I wanted to talk about it if we needed to.
Did you talk about vaccines? I think I might have been reading the chat. Are we going to have access to vaccines, or are the students in the schools going to get vaccines? What does that all look like?
Yeah, so they're if necessary, I think you'll have access to it. Obviously, we hope that by the time you're in service with us, the vaccine will be available to everyone who wants it, and it won't be a matter of like needing to be working with students or anything like that, or be a part of certain phases. We're hoping we're through all phases of the vaccination by the time y'all would start with us. So I know that like right now, the folks that are currently serving with us are eligible for it if they want to get it. And thanks, Shelby. In Washington, by the 16th, everyone 16 plus will qualify. So it shouldn't be an issue for you to get it if you want it. Awesome. All right, I just wanted to get our COVID talk kind of up front here in case anyone had questions around. If you do have more questions, we'll have a Q&A at the end. Just so you know too, while I am presenting, I can't monitor the chat, so feel free to post questions in there, but I won't be able to check them until we get to the Q&A session. So this is just kind of our objectives for today. We're going to talk a little bit about City Year's values. We're going to do a recap of the benefits as well as a little bit of what to expect next, and then end with a Q&A. I'm going to kind of cruise through most of the content because I think the benefit of this first session really is the Q&A, and some of the stuff that we cover in this session anyways is going to be kind of a refresher, and it won't be like new information to y'all, but I like to cover it again anyways just because I think it's important stuff to be thinking about as you're preparing to serve with us. So yeah, and then I'll try and leave a bulk of our time at the end for Q&A, because I think like that's where we get the most benefit out of this session. And at that time too, there won't be a PowerPoint, so I'll be able to be in the gallery with you all, see all your faces, and as well monitor the chat. So yeah, we're going to start out with a conversation around City Year's values. We're going to recap CY's benefits, and then what to expect next. So our organizational values. So obviously you all are confirmed to serve with us, and so sorry, gotta let someone in. No, they're gone. So obviously you all applied to serve with us, and so you know, you're probably familiar with these if you've looked at our website at all, or you know, in your research and planning to apply with City Year. But these are our 10 organizational values, and we really encourage folks to you know, look into these and explore these and understand how they relate to you and what kind of pushes you to serve. Because as you know, I think we talked about in the interview, you know, City Year can be a challenging experience, can be stressful, and really finding and figuring out and thinking about why you're doing this program can help you get through some of those hard times. Additionally, we also think that you know, these organizational values help us not only be of service to our students as best we can, but help them to become the best people they can be. And so I'm just going to do a quick rundown of what they are. And so service to a cause greater than self, pretty self-explanatory. We asked you a question about this on your interview about, you know, kind of what that means to you. But really it's just about being of service to something bigger than yourself. Students first, collaboration always, kind of just a summation of our approach to work. All the decisions we make, we keep the students at top of mind in making those decisions, as well as the idea that like we have a team-based approach and we're always collaborating with in our organization and with outside organizations in helping, you know, further our goals as an organization. So a few other ones that are kind of self-explanatory: belief in the power of young people, social justice for all. Again, pretty self-explanatory. We believe that young people can drastically change the world, and that too many of them don't get an opportunity to, and so we want to provide opportunities for young people and show them how powerful they can be. Social justice for all. Level 5, leadership, just kind of the idea of like leadership to the nth level, the nth degree. You know, City Year, everyone within City Year we see as a leader, and no matter what big or small way that is. Empathy, inclusivity, those are both, you know, pretty self-explanatory as well. Ubuntu, this is, you know, an African proverb that, you know, to sum up simply, even though it's much bigger than that, is that, you know, we are all tied to one another because we're because of who we are as human beings, right? Like our humanity is tied to each other. And so, you know, what we do kind of ripples out and affects everybody. And there is like a higher moral calling because of our nature as human beings, that we're all connected with one another. And then teamwork and excellence. So I'd just like to, you know, introduce these to y'all in case you haven't had time to, you know, really look at them and think about them. I think it's important to ground yourself in these because every decision we make, everything we're going to ask you to do with City Year is grounded in one of these 10 organizational values. And then I want to talk a little bit about City Year's commitment to equity. I think there's a real I think our society is coming and confronting a lot of the issues that we face around equity and racism and stuff like that. And I think it's important that people understand that City Year has a commitment to equity. We are committed to being an anti-racist organization, and we're doing things to kind of make sure that happens. We're not perfect. We're working through a lot of things that we need to change still, but I think it's important to understand that our goal is to be an anti-racist organization that provides equity for not only our students, but those folks that are on staff with us. So some of the ways that we do that are through our Office of Equity, which we just established a few years ago. We have a Chief Equity Officer and a number of people on the staff in our Office of Equity, and their role is really to oversee and you know, make sure that we have consistent checks and balances around equity in our organization for not only our staff, but our core members and our students. We also have an equity council, which is made up of staff members who serve 2-year terms. Currently, the equity council is kind of looking at our policies and procedures, as well as our culture, which are the next two pieces, and evaluating what pieces have been harmful in the past and things that, you know, could present harm in the future, and making sure that all those things are kind of you know, addressed. And then the other space that we have a more, I guess it's more active for everyone, is our DBIE learning. And so our DBIE learning is happens in a number of different ways. I'm going to talk about a few of them here, but just in case you aren't familiar with the term DBIE, it stands for diversity, belonging, inclusion, and equity. And all four of these things are a really big part of our commitment to making sure everyone feels like, you know, not only that they belong with City Year, but that their voice is heard, that their culture is respected, and not just respected, but able to be themselves at work. And so a few of the ways that we actively take work in our equity work is through affinity groups. And so we have a number of national affinity groups that folks are involved in, as well as some more site-specific ones for Seattle. So you can see here the list of the you know, national ones that we have that our staff members participate in. And then you can also see like our specific ones in Seattle. So we have a white anti-racist group, a Black affinity group, an Asian American Pacific Islander affinity group, a biracial affinity group, and an LGBTQIA plus affinity group. There is, you know, and if you're interested in any of these, you'll not only have a chance to be a part of them, but also a chance to maybe create one if you feel like something that you believe in strongly isn't represented here. You can see that some of them are a little bit different than our national ones. And so we really rely on our staff and core members to advocate for what they need and what they want. You know, because we feel like we want folks to belong, and we want you all to have a space to be able to do that. So this is something you'll have an opportunity to participate in through your service with City Year Seattle. City Year Seattle is one of our sites, one of our 29 sites that is most committed to equity, and it's something that's always at like the top of mind when we're going through any decision-making process. So just wanted to talk a little bit about that because we really feel like our commitment to equity is also like a core part of our values as an organization. And now this is kind of, again, this will be a part where we're going to be going over some stuff that you've probably already heard or covered before, but I feel like it's important to talk about the benefits again, because we inevitably have folks every year who come to us and say like, well, I didn't know about this, or I didn't know about that, and it's making my service, you know, really hard. And it usually comes back to benefits. And so we just want to make sure that we get these in front of you as much as possible. I encourage you all to look over these on your own time as well. But these are some of the different benefits. I'm going to talk about a few of these, you know, here individually. But yeah, these are a lot of the things that we usually get questions about, not only before service, but once people are in service with us, have questions about. So like I said, I'm going to talk about some of them specifically here. So again, this is like right off the bat, our in-person service here. And again, I messed up because this says City or Detroit, which is the other site that I manage, so this is not accurate. I apologize. The City or Seattle stipend is higher than that. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but I will get that information to you all. It's over $700. I think it's around $720. But you do get that biweekly stipend. And you get that every 2 weeks throughout service with us, regardless of whether we're on winter break or you use some of your time off. Like, you will get that stipend every 2 weeks for the entire 11 months of service with us. And then additionally, if you're relocating more than 50 miles to serve with City or Seattle, you'll be eligible for our relocation benefit. And that's just a $500 one-time payment to kind of help offset the costs of relocation. And that usually shows up in like your first or second paycheck. And you're automatically eligible for that if you're moving more than 50 miles to be observed with us. So when you start with us at registration, we'll just kind of it's a very simple process. We'll ask what address you moved from and you know, where you're currently living. And if that's more than 50 miles, then there you go, $500. And then also for folks that are maybe having trouble with housing around the time we're starting, we do have some benefits available to help folks who haven't secured housing yet. We can usually help out with like up to 6 nights in like a hotel or an Airbnb. Unfortunately, like this benefit, like we can't give it to everyone, and the less people that use it, the more that we can help those people. So we really encourage folks to try and have housing figured out beforehand. So the folks that do run into emergencies or have issues with housing, we can help them as much as possible. Because otherwise, you know, we don't have enough to help the people that really need it. So we do have those benefits available to folks in terms of, you know, the stipend and moving. And then we do have a number of different services to help folks with like mental health. This is in addition to our health insurance, which you're welcome. We have a free health insurance policy with City Year, and we encourage you to enroll in that. It's not required. You can stay in whichever one you know, you might already have, but we do have a free one if you want to enroll in it. And then separate from the health insurance, we also have these mental health services that everybody has access to, regardless of whether you're in our health insurance program or not. And so through our EAP, you can get, you know, I think it's 6 free counseling sessions per year with us. And then you also have access to Talkspace and 10% Happier, which are like meditation app and like a online counseling app. So, you know, we really want to make sure we can support you not only physically, but mentally as you're going through the program. Additionally, you'll also be eligible for the Siegel Education Award upon successfully completing the program. That's the $6,345, you know, I guess, scholarship that you get upon successfully completing the program. People do have questions about how to access this, and so this isn't something that you have to like apply for that you might get. Like, if you complete service with us, you're eligible for this, and you'll just have to do some paperwork after service to be able to access that award. And then we also you know, we partner with over 100 colleges and universities that offer scholarships to our alumni in all sorts of different fields. So we have a list of those that you can look at online, but you know, I personally took advantage of these in getting my master's and now working on my PhD, getting scholarships by being a City Year alumni. I think that it's honestly, for those of you considering education after City Year, I think it's one of our best benefits. So definitely something to consider. These are just some of the career partners. A lot of people after City Year want to do like more service, which is great. You know, and so we are, you know, very well partnered with like Teaching Fellows, Peace Corps, Teach for America, all these different programs that like having done City Year will like basically like make you an even better applicant for them. And then additionally, folks often wonder like, what do people that do City Year go into afterwards? And so you don't have to have background in education or like working with youth or nonprofit to do City Year. But obviously a lot of people that end up doing the program do have an interest in that. And so that's why, we see about 48% of our alumni go into nonprofit or education, but we inevitably have folks that go into all these different other fields as well. And as a part of our what we call Life After City Year program, part of your service year will be dedicated to helping you figure out what you want to do next and how City Year can support you in like meeting those goals. And so, yeah, we inevitably have people that go on to be doctors or lawyers or social workers or work in marketing, stuff like that. We talked about education partnerships. And then, yeah, just kind of what to expect next. So you're currently at the prepare stage of our process. So we kind of break it down into 6 stages. You're at the 3rd stage right now. So we're trying to, at this point, get information in your hands to sort of help prepare you for service with us. So that's what we did today a little bit. We talked about our commitment to equity. We talked about our organizational values. And we will have a few more sessions, as well as roll out a few different resources in this prepare sort of bucket to give you an idea of what you can do to literally help prepare for your service year. And then you'll be going through these next 3 buckets as well down the line, relocating, going through registration with us, and then starting with us. So as part of, some of those steps, these are some sessions we're going to be hosting. These will start happening. The rest of the sessions will probably start happening in May. And the first one that we'll have is going to be an introduction to living and serving in Seattle. So we'll have a little conversation, excuse me, about our service model, the schools and neighborhoods we work in, and just a general conversation about what makes Seattle dope and why you're going to have fun while you're serving with us. That'll be our next session, and I'll get invites to that. We're going to try and host each of these at least twice, so folks can have a chance to join, and then we'll record it as well if you can't make it. We're also going to have a session where we have current AmeriCorps members serving in Seattle as well as staff do sort of an Ask Me Anything session where you can, they'll tell you a little bit about their role, and then you can ask any questions you might have. Our ED Lee will also have a session where he kind of lays out his vision for the site and how you all fit into that. And then we'll also have a session on relocating and finding housing in Seattle. This will be in addition to a housing guide that we will roll out, as well as a roommate survey. So we'll also have a session around that same time as we're rolling those resources out as well. And then just before registration, we'll also have another session to kind of help prepare you for registration. So you'll be hearing from me about signing up for those. And like I said, we'll probably start most of those starting in May, and then kind of through May, June, and then July. I always, this is probably far off in the future for a lot of you, but I always like to start reminding folks now, especially considering that a lot of the places where you can get these documents are in backlogs and they can be hard to get, but you can't start with us and you can't register with us unless you have your birth certificate, social security card, and either a driver's license, state ID, or passport. And we inevitably have folks that, even though we try to remind them, that show up to registration and say, well, I can just give you my social security number. And unfortunately, that doesn't work. We are, kind of tied down by, the federal requirements around AmeriCorps to have each of these things that we can see and then make copies of. So you will need these 3 pieces of documentation for registration. So please start trying to locate them now so that you know where they are when it's time to get them. And if you can't find them, you can begin the process of getting new ones. So I just figured it's never too early to remind folks about this. So I know I covered a ton of information, and it sometimes feels like I really speed through everything, but it's because I think I like to spend these last 15, 20 minutes in our Q&A and really allowing you all to ask whatever questions you may have. I know everything is super new, super fresh, some of you just confirmed, and have a number of different questions, and I want to spend some time being able to answer those for you. So really, I'm just going to open it up to y'all. I'll be able to monitor the chat now. And so if you have questions, you can put them in there. Otherwise, feel free to take yourself off mute and ask them. And this can be literally related to anything. I guarantee if you have a question, other people are wondering it as well. So please feel free to ask any questions you might have now. And like I said, I'll monitor the chat. So what questions do you all have? Awesome. I'm seeing stuff come in the chat already. Does health insurance cover medications that need to be refilled regularly? It should. It depends. The one thing I can't tell you is what the copay will be. I know when I served with City Year, I had 2 medications that I had to be on regularly, and I think it was like $10 each time I needed to get them. But yeah, you should be covered, you know, through that, depending on what the medications are. But registration and orientation. Excuse me, do we have dates for registration and orientation? So we do not have dates for registration, but you will start full-time service with us on August 9th. Now, to be clear, that is not like the first time that you need to be in person in Seattle. That is the time we start full-time, is August 9th. And that's the day you will start working full-time with us. But I'm just trying to look at my calendar here. So you have to be registered with us at least 1 week prior. And so we will host registration days, and those will probably be on the week of that last week in July. So July 26th to 30th. And there'll be an opportunity for you to sign up for a day to come in and do registration that week. But it'll just be like a one-off thing that day that you have to do. And then we'll start service full-time on August 9th. Which kind of brings me to a point that may come up, but I'll just talk about it anyways. I really encourage folks to like relocate to the city in like mid-July, like the week of the 12th, so that you have some time to adjust to a new city, a new place, understand like transportation routes, stuff like that. I really encourage folks to move kind of during that second week of July, just to orient yourself to the city a little bit. And then be ready to come to registration the week of the 26th and start with us August 9th. And then let me see a backup. I got a lot of questions up here. Dates for when will the roommate survey and stuff like that be sent out? So the roommate stuff we're going to start rolling out in May. But you'll also be invited to join the Facebook group if you haven't yet. I really encourage you to do that. That's a place where really the roommate survey will just be us collecting data from each of you all to basically, you know, help pair you with folks that might be good roommates for you. Decide like, you know, there's questions on there about kind of what like kind of lifestyle you like to live. You know, are you a night owl? Are you an early riser? Are you clean? Are you messy? Stuff like that, to kind of help you choose roommates. But also, like, if you just want to reach out to people on the Facebook group to try and form an alliance of people to search for housing, you can definitely do that. But then we'll also send out like the housing guide and stuff like that in May. When will we know what grades we are working with? So you will find out your school placement usually in the second or third week of service. So like that third week in August usually. A number of things go into school placement, including like where you're living, who you're living with, if you're living with other core members, what sort of transportation you have access to, you know, what experience you've had in the past working with different grade levels. And ultimately, though, the choices around school placement are done to make sure that we have the most diverse team possible, both in terms of, you know, skill and representation for our students. And so that takes precedence over anything else. But that being said, like, we don't want to put you in a position where you're gonna have like an hour commute to school every day. If if you're gonna be taking public transit, we don't want to put you somewhere where it's gonna be impossible for you to get to school. Yeah, around the third week of August, you'll know your school and grade placement. Okay, next question. Do you have a general idea of which area of the city we should start looking for housing in? It's a good question. And I've had some people reach out to me about this already as well. Basically, I just, the best way to kind of answer this question is by saying that I strongly suggest that in your search for housing, you look for things that are south of downtown. All of our schools are south of downtown. So there's a lot of really great, cool neighborhoods, like about equal with downtown or more northern. If you can certainly live there if you want. You can, where you want to live is up to you, but your commute is going to be significantly longer by living in those areas, because all of our schools are on the southwest and southeast side of Seattle. So I'm happy to, when we roll with the housing resources, we'll give you a list of areas, some places that we know core members live now, some places that they suggest you should live. We'll have all sorts of that kind of stuff. But our schools are in the southern part of Seattle. So I would encourage you to start your search south of downtown. And then I can also share this as well, but you can also find on our website, you can find like a list of our schools and just put them in on a map and kind of figure out where is the most central place to that. I no longer live in Seattle, but I lived there for 5 years. And I lived in White Center, and that was really close to all the schools. It was a block from the school I served in, but it was also like a 5-minute bus ride from probably 4 of the other schools. So yeah, I mean, if you're looking at places like that, like the Roxbury neighborhood, the Highland Park neighborhood in South Seattle, South Park, Georgetown, stuff like that, those are all really close to our schools. So yeah, when will we find out our school assignments? I already answered that. So yeah, when I say August 9th, I mean that's the day training starts, and you'll be in training for about a month with us before we go into schools. So school will start in September, but you all start on August 9th, and then there'll be about a month of training. Replacement. Would Puyallup be a bit too far? I mean, if I would say yes, but if you have a car and you want to make that commute, that's totally up to you. So yeah, I mean, so if you have a car, it wouldn't be terrible, but I know some people that do have cars that don't, and even some people that just want to take the bus to do it. But like there's a few cities kind of on the southern end of Seattle that sometimes people live in. There's Des Moines, there's Renton, and those are a few of the cities that are kind of on the southern end, where if you have a car, it's really not that bad. The issue with people living north of downtown is that, like, if you ever look at Seattle on a map, it's like long and skinny, right? And it kind of is like, it's almost like an hourglass into downtown, and all the traffic flows through there. So if you're trying to go from north to south during rush hour, it's kind of a hot mess. But if you're living south of the city, there's still going to be traffic getting into the southern part of the city, but it's not as bad. Sorry, that was a long answer to your question about Puyallup. That is all the questions I have in the chat right now. Feel free to put more in there, or take yourself off mute and ask. I'm certain if you have a question, others are thinking it, so. Or if there's anything I can clarify that didn't make sense. If you want to work with a specific age group, is it, i.e. high school, is it likely you'll be assigned to one? So this is actually where it can be a little different by site. So like, for example, like in Seattle, we're only in one high school right now. And so there's a very finite number of spots in that high school. So I can't guarantee it. Like if you have like but I also really encourage folks to advocate for yourself too. Like when you're working with our impact managers and stuff, like if that's what you want, because the worst that can happen is you're just not placed there. But there's no reason not to like advocate for yourself if you want to be in a high school. But I would say like at another site, like I'm trying to think of a site, like I think in Milwaukee or in Chicago, we're in like mostly high schools and only a few elementary and middle schools, in which case, that makes it, that's obviously you're more likely to get placed into a high school. But yeah, so I would just say advocate for yourself. And I would also say to kind of go along with that, and not that this is what not that the person that put this in the chat saying they don't want to work in elementary schools, but when I served with City or Seattle, I was all about like I need to be in a middle school. I want to work with middle school students. Like I don't know how I could function in elementary school. And then I got placed in 3rd grade, which is the lowest grade that City Year works with. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Like I did not think I wanted to work with 3rd graders. I was like, they're kind of gross and messy, and I don't like, even though middle schoolers are too, but it ended up like being the best thing for me. So I also think like you just have to like also, because part of school placement also is like our folks that decide school placement are like experts in like the field of education, and so they can see things that you might not realize about your skill set that would make you really make you a really strong person in certain classrooms. So I would just kind of go into it with an open mind. Again, that's more than what you asked, but I'm telling you anyways. Let me scroll back up here. I think I remember hearing about fingerprints being needed for the background check. If I'm not making that up, when would those be needed? That's a great question. You will have to do fingerprinting, a field print fingerprinting process that we have. And that will happen during our onboarding phase. Our onboarding is supposed to launch at the beginning of May. And so what will happen is you'll get an email. Basically, you'll fill out our onboarding. Once you complete that, you'll get an email from this company called FieldPrint. And basically, you just have to make an appointment with them. They have several locations across all the cities. I think you can get even done at some post offices, and then you'll just have to go in, get your fingerprints taken, and they send the results to us. It's a pretty painless process, but you will need to do that, yes. What on average would be the time we should be at our schools in the morning? That's a great question. So most of our schools, I shouldn't say that most, all of our schools in Seattle, unless they change it this year, because there is also a lot like going on in the educational world about like start times for students. But in the past, all of our schools have started between 7 and 8. I'm sorry, that's not when the schools start. That's what the core member arrival time is, between 7 and 8. So like when I served at Rocks Hill Elementary, and our start time was 7:15. But I also had folks working at like Aki Kurosi Middle School that I knew, and their start time was like 7:45. And then schools usually start between 8 and 9. So you can expect to have to be there. We always get there before students get there and leave after students leave. Very long days, but yeah. How do we apply for food stamps? Great question. So we will help you with that process after you start with us. It'll be part of like orientation. We'll help make sure that you're able to apply for those. So you definitely like, I would just encourage you to wait until that happens. In the past, we've been able to have people come in and like expedite the process, but with everything going on with places being closed because of COVID, it might be a little bit more complicated this year. You may actually have to go to DSHS and like have it done there, but we will help make sure you understand that process after you start with us. You won't be eligible until after you start with us anyways, so you won't be able to do it until after August 9th anyways. Let's see here. Would you say there's any time to get a part-time or weekend job? Another great question, and this is really like, I always just like put this back on the person that asked it, because it's really up to you, right? Like me personally, like I mean, it depends on a number of different things, right? Like when I did City Year, that's the most money I ever made in my life, and it's not that much money. And so I was like living the high life, and I didn't need another job. I also don't think I would have been able to do it because I was putting in like 10 to 12 hour days, 5 days a week. That being said, if you're a robot or a machine, and you're about chasing that skrill, I mean, do you? If you want to work in the evenings and you want to work on the weekends, definitely do it. But I will say that like there is no gray area around like service with City Year in terms of like you're not going to be able to leave service 15 minutes early because you start a shift at your other job after service, right? Like you have to be present for the required hours at City Year. But I do know people that worked on weekends and stuff, and that worked for them. I don't know if I could have done it mentally because I needed that time after service and on the weekend to kind of like do my own thing, hang out, go out, stuff like that. But yeah, if you want to do it, you definitely can. Also, how do people typically secure housing slash get approved for an apartment before we start getting paychecks? Don't you typically need proof of employment? Yes, that is something that comes up quite often, and we can provide you with an employment verification letter before you start with us. And so not every, as long as you have, the payment, most people don't, I shouldn't say most. My experience has been like it doesn't always come up, but definitely some landlords, if you're renting, will ask for that, and we can provide that verification letter for you. And if they don't like that, we can like talk to them over the phone or whatever. So, and then what was the other part of that question? Another thing in terms of that, and I think your question kind of brings this up, is to really start thinking about saving and stuff like that before you move, especially because I think I know I didn't know this before I rented for the first time. Like typically the upfront cost is a little bit higher. Most landlords expect you to pay first and last month's rent as well as like a deposit when you rent a place. And so if you find a place and they're like, oh, rent is like $650 a month, like you should expect that first month to cost around 1,800, right? First month, last month, and then the deposit. So be thinking about those things as well in terms of looking for housing. Let's see here. I served with AmeriCorps in 2019, 2020, and one of the best experiences was the service launch in Seattle. Will that still be taking place? So if that's there's a few different things that's happened. There's AmeriCorps opening day and there's City Year opening day. I think that's maybe what you're referring to. AmeriCorps opening day is like, at least when I did it, it was like downtown Seattle, and it was like a big, basically AmeriCorps launch day. And if that's what you're talking about, yes, that will take place, and you'll be able to be a part of that. And then City Year also has their own sort of opening day. And when I say opening day, it might be language that's not common, but it's basically like a launch of the year, kind of a little celebration of like the start of the service year. I've had an FBI check and fingerprints taken within the last 4 years. Will I still be required to do so in Seattle? Yes. Unfortunately, everyone that does our program has to have updated ones done through our system. It can be somewhat frustrating. I understand if you've had it done recently, but that's just our school district's, Seattle Public Schools, policy is that you have to have up-to-date fingerprints taken. If we have school loans, do we have to request to have loans deferred? So there's two different answers to this question. The first one is in terms of federal loans. If you took out federal student loans for college, you can have those put into deferment, and it's just a matter of logging into your account, whoever your loan carrier is, and whatever their process is for putting those in deferment. And federal student loans will qualify for deferment while you're doing City Year. And we can help you if they want documentation or whatever for that too. If you have private loans out, that is up to your loan carrier 100%. I have heard of some private loan carriers allowing deferment, but some of them also are just like, no, you got to keep paying us. So it depends on what kind of loans you have. But if you did take out like federal student loans, you can definitely put them in deferment. Let's see here. Is the biweekly number you give out before or after taxes? Is there a city tax in Seattle? Like if a residency is in another state, will we pay for a tax living in Seattle? So the biweekly number is before taxes. And so obviously it won't be $730 every 2 weeks. So it'll be a little bit less after taxes are taken out. You will not have any, what do they call it? Why can't I think of the word? There's no income tax in Seattle. So you won't be paying taxes on that. There is like sales tax and stuff, but no income tax. Could the stipend potentially go up by the time we begin training? Yes, but I don't want to set the expectation that it will. There's a number of, so I know if any of you follow like the relief packages going through Congress recently, have some pieces of them that relate to AmeriCorps. And one of those pieces is raising the AmeriCorps stipend across the board. And as it sits right now, the raise that is like that is potentially there for stipends is not very much, like literally like $10 every 2 weeks or something like that. But our CEO and our CFO are both like advocating for more than that. We don't really know what's going to happen, if that original one's even going to go through. But there are some things happening that, we're hoping over the next few months to figure out. We would absolutely love. And it's something that, to be transparent, I sit on our equity council, and we've been advocating for a number of different things in terms of stipend, because we really feel that the stipend is a barrier to some people being able to do the service. And at least for me, that doesn't sit well. I don't think, I think everyone that wants to serve should be able to serve. And again, that like goes back to our equity talk earlier, like City Year is not perfect at everything. And I think the stipend is an area where we are not doing well, and that we need to really advocate for getting that raised so that everyone can do. Anyway, I won't go on a diatribe about that, but the answer is that potentially it could go up, yes. But I don't want to set that expectation because I don't know for sure. The benefits page touched on access to public transportation. Will we get a free bus pass or something, and when? Yes, all of our service members in Seattle get a free Orca pass. Basically, you'll get a card, and that provides you with free access to our bus. You get on the bus, swipe the card, and you're good to go. So you will have access to that. I don't know if this has changed or not. In the past, it didn't give you access to the light rail train, only the buses, but that may have changed. But I don't know, if you're not from Seattle, like the Seattle public transportation system is awesome. Like, I live in Detroit now, and we don't even have buses here, and I really miss Seattle. I go back to Seattle 5 times a year. But yeah, the Seattle transportation system is awesome. So, and you'll have free access to that. What does a leadership structure look like? Who's supervising us at what levels? That's a great question. So when you first start with us, it'll be a little kind of like fuzzy in that regard. But once you're placed in your school placement, you will have a team leader who is someone that served, usually someone who served with City Year in the past. Excuse me. And they're kind of there to, help guide you and coach you. And then additionally, you'll also have a program manager, and that is a City Year staff person who is basically the school partner / liaison for whatever school you're serving at. And they're also there to help supervise you and coach you as well. And then as you go higher up, so we have like, for example, there's core members, there's a team leader on every team, there's a program manager on every team, and then we have 2 program directors who oversee the program managers, and then we have managing director of impact who oversees those 2 directors, and then we have our CEO. So that's kind of moving upwards from core member, what the supervision structure is like. So basically, you'll have a program manager at your school that will be your supervisor. Any other questions, concerns, anything I can help address for you? Well, if you do need anything at all, definitely feel free to reach out to me, email me, text me, give me a call. I'm here to help you as we approach the service year, and I want to do whatever I can to support you. So please reach out to me if you need anything at all. Otherwise, I'll definitely be in touch as we're having more sessions and as we get new information about registration and onboarding and stuff like that. You'll definitely be hearing from me. By the time you start with us in August, you will be sick of getting emails from me, I promise. So I'm here to support you though. So please let me know if there's anything I can do. But yeah, that's all I have. I'll stay on just for a little bit, but please go ahead and log off if you don't think you have any more questions. I just know that some people, like to have a little bit of a smaller crowd to ask sometimes. So if you want to ask me just a one-on-one question, I'll stay on for a little bit. Otherwise, have a great night. Thank you all for joining. Really looking forward to meeting you in person soon. So